defeated. The people united will never be 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 defeated.
Money for jobs, not for war.
Money for jobs, not for war.
Fired up, won't take it no more.
Fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for schools, not for war.
Money for schools, not for war.
Fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for housing, not for war.
Money for housing, not for war.
Fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for healthcare, not for war.
Money for healthcare, not for war.
Fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs.
not
Fund,
the war machine.
not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs.
not the war machine.
Not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs.
not the war machine.
Not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs.
not the war machine.
Not the war machine.
Trump lies,
Trump lies.
people die.
People die.
Trump lies,
Trump lies.
people die.
People die.
Pentagon kills by the hour, what do we do? Pentagon kills by the hour, what do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour, what do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour, what do we do?
Fight the power.
Let's introduce our next speaker, Brian Becker from the Answer Coalition.
Thank you, and I'm so happy to see everyone here today. We're not just in front of the White House. There are demonstrations today that have been called on 4 days' notice, and they're taking place in 65 cities, big and small, all over the United States. And I think that is the clearest indication that if Trump goes forward to escalate the already existing war against the people of Venezuela, our demonstrations will grow from the hundreds to the thousands, to the tens of thousands, and to the millions. That's precisely what will happen, because the people of this country do not support another U.S. war based on lies, this time not in the Middle East, not in South Asia, not against Iraq or Afghanistan, wars that cost millions of lives. It will be this time against the people of Venezuela, a country that has the largest oil reserves in the world. So when we see slogans like "No blood for oil," that speaks more directly to what's really going on than this fake propaganda narrative that the United States government is now at war against a new made-up enemy. Narco-terrorist is a made-up word for a made-up enemy. It's a complete fiction. It's a camouflage. It's a lie, like the Iraq war was premised on lies. And the fact of the matter is, even if some elements in the Trump administration are being restrained because they know that Iraq was such a catastrophe, not only for the people in Iraq, a million of whom died, not only a catastrophe for the tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers who either died or had life-changing wounds during that war, but it was a catastrophe for the empire. It was a catastrophe for U.S. imperialism. And there are elements in the U.S. ruling class right now who are telling Trump, wait a second, this is going to be like Iraq and like Afghanistan, and it will be a catastrophe not only for the people, but for our system. And so they're urging some element of restraint. That's on one side of the equation. But we have to think about what else is going on. They've deployed the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, 15,000 Marines, battleship groups, fighter jets, and there's another section of the U.S. ruling class, and I would say you only need to read the editorials of the Wall Street Journal to understand what's going on inside the ruling class right now at this very critical moment. But the Wall Street Journal is taunting Trump. They're saying to Trump, look, if you don't take out Maduro after you've assembled all of these military forces outside of Venezuela, if Maduro is allowed to remain, if the Venezuelan government is not toppled, you, Donald Trump, are the loser, and Maduro is the winner. And this was precisely what was going on right before the U.S., Britain, and France began the bombing campaign against Libya in 2011. Obama and his defense secretary were not really 100% committed to the war against Libya. In fact, Robert Gates, who was the Secretary of Defense, said, look, we don't have strategic interests in Libya. There's no need for us to go to war against Libya. Now, he's a war maker. He's not a pacifist. He's certainly not a leftist, not an anti-imperialist. He was against the war against Libya for the reasons of strategy for the empire. But then the Washington Post began taunting Obama just the way the Wall Street Journal is taunting Trump, and saying to Obama in their editorials, you are a passive president. You do not show leadership. And as a result, Gaddafi will win and you, Obama, will be the loser. And under those circumstances, Obama turned his position, authorized the bombing campaign against Libya, and then the war commenced. And hundreds of thousands of Libyans were killed. And even worse, Libya was completely destroyed as an entity. And the most progressive government in northern Africa had human slavery returned to Libya within a couple years. So what's my point? My point is, and I'm not saying this to give an interesting historical recount, my point is there is a battle going on over whether or not the Trump administration should actually go forward and launch an all-out war against Venezuela. And since this is an undetermined, undecided, unfinished battle, what we, the American people, do can make a difference. What we do right now can make a difference. That's why we call these demonstrations on 4 days' notice. Because even if our demonstrations are not yet in the hundreds of thousands, they only get to that point if we start somewhere. And so we have started somewhere, and the somewhere is right here. I really want people to understand the historical moment. The historical moment is undecided. And even though we are not the determining factor, we can become a major factor if we build this anti-war movement in the coming days and weeks and months. We can do this. The people of Venezuela are not our enemy. Our enemy is in the White House. Our enemy is on Wall Street. Our enemy is in the military-industrial complex. Our enemy are the terrorists who are terrorizing immigrant working-class families in the cities and towns of the United States. They're not somewhere else. They're right here at home. So let's build this movement. Let's make it strong. Let's make it an anti-war movement, an anti-racist movement, a pro-people movement, a welcoming movement to immigrants if we know what we can do. If we rise to the occasion, we can stop this war before it starts. Thank you very much.
Money for jobs, not for war.
Money for jobs, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for schools, not for war.
Money for schools, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for housing, not for war.
Money for housing, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Money for jobs, not for war.
Money for jobs, not for war.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
We're fired up, won't take it no more.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
We won't pay for war and slaughter.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
Pentagon kills by the hour. What do we do?
Fight the power.
And for our next speaker, we'll have Medea Benjamin from Code Pink.
So I so appreciate the speakers who have come before, because I think this has been really educational for us as well as inspirational. And when you look at who it is that is pushing war in this country, I think we have to look to Southern Florida. And we have to look to some of these right-wing Republicans, as well as some of the horrible Democrats, who have made their careers on opposing progressive governments in Latin America. And in some ways, when the U.S. was, well, the U.S. continues to be so involved in the Middle East, but at least they took their eyes off of Latin America. And Latin America was able to build governments that represented their people. Now, thanks to Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, U.S. eyes and U.S. oppression is on the people of Latin America. And so we see these right-wing people in Southern Florida who are pretending that they represent the will of the American people. And they are spewing this ridiculous kinds of ideas about the made-up Cartel de los Soles, the made-up position of Maduro, making him look like he was Saddam Hussein, the made-up threats that Venezuela poses to the U.S. in terms of the drugs. And also, I don't know if you've heard the made-up stories about uranium being sent to Iran and Hezbollah. It's all of these ridiculous things. But what is really, really amazing is, despite all of this, and if you spend 5 minutes looking at Fox News, you hear it over and over again, the majority of the American people do not support an invasion of Venezuela. And that is quite astounding, because it's not just progressive people, it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans. It is people who supported Donald Trump in his campaign when he said he was going to be an anti-war president. It's people who are part of the MAGA base who say, we don't want more wars. And while we may disagree with them on all kinds of things, like the immigrant issue and the way they are supporting the Gestapos who are going into our neighborhoods and pulling out our neighbors from their workplaces, from their homes, from their places of worship, we do agree with them on one thing, and that is we don't want to be involved in more wars. You know, for that we can go back to the warnings of the founding fathers of this country, who said America should not go overseas in search of monsters to destroy. And whether or not you think Maduro is a monster, the warning is there. It is not the role of the United States to get involved in overseas interventions. And the way this country has just in the last couple of months been going after progressive governments in Latin America and the Caribbean is horrific. Leo talked to us about the U.S. involvement in Honduras, about what the U.S. has done in Argentina with the threats of either taking away money or giving money. But I just recently came from Cuba, and what the U.S. is doing in Cuba is criminal. It is absolutely criminal. It is choking that country that has already been hurt by sanctions, but with additional sanctions now in Trump's second term, and with the threats of even tourists who want to go to Cuba, to enjoy Cuba from Europe, now can't go because their visas would be denied coming into the United States. So everything the U.S. is doing in Latin America is making the lives of people miserable. And so it is so important, as Brian said, that this is a moment. Every day I wake up, I don't know about you, I wake up and say, did Trump bomb Venezuela last night? And every day that it doesn't happen, I think we have another day to fight this administration. And as Brian said, we're going to do that in the streets, building up, but we're also going to do it in Congress. Because let me tell you, I have never felt in all the times we've been going to Congress that this is more important right now. Because I am reading the papers every single day, and what they are saying is that the opposition that is coming from Congress is putting the brakes on this administration. And the opposition coming from Congress is coming from, yes, the Democratic Party, but it's also starting to break through in the Republicans as well. We are starting to see Republicans say, I'm not so sure about the blowing up of those boats. We are starting to see Republicans say, I'm not so sure about this idea of getting involved in another war. Could this be another 20-year engagement in Latin America? And so it is really important that we continue the pressure on Congress, because there have been votes and there will be votes coming up called War Powers Act. Now, if you don't know what that is, it reaffirms what the Constitution says, which is that the executive branch of the government doesn't have the authority to wage war. It can only come from the legislative branch. And so getting Congress to reassert its authority, and not just reassert its authority to wage war, but also to say, we don't want to wage war. So now is the time to continue to pressure Congress. Now is the time to get out in the streets. Now is the time to be absolutely clear. We want those 15,000 troops that have been deployed to the region to be taken away. And certainly not to be deployed on our streets either. We want all of those aircraft carriers, those F-35s, that buildup of the biggest armadas in the world, we want them to leave the Caribbean. And while this administration is bragging about how it has revived the Monroe Doctrine, they even talk about the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. We, the people of this country and of the entire hemisphere, say we want to bury once and for all the Monroe Doctrine. The U.S. has no right to tell people in Latin America what their governments should be, who they should vote for. And if we want to see democracy in the continent, let's start right here in the United States. Troops off streets, ICE out of our communities, and let's bring some money back from the Pentagon to invest in people's needs and not war. Thank you. Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
Fund people's needs,
Fund people's needs,
not the war machine.
not the war machine.
We're gonna try something new. I need some audience participation. So I'm gonna say something, you're gonna say shut it down. What are you gonna say?
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless war,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless wars,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless wars,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Trump's lies,
Shut it down.
imperialism,
Shut it down.
endless wars,
Shut it
the
down.
whole damn system.
Shut it down.
Let's welcome up our next speaker, Netfa from the Black Alliance for Peace.
Thank you. As said, my name is Netfa. I'm with the Black Alliance for Peace, and the Black Alliance for Peace has sent me here to deliver this message. Please bear with me. On behalf of the Black Alliance for Peace, we understand that U.S. imperialism is unable to accept the sovereignty, progress, and moral example of the Bolivarian Revolution, and is escalating its aggressive attacks against Venezuela to destroy its example and seize its resources. This is by no means an isolated struggle. What started as aggression against Venezuela and the Bolivarian Revolution has already claimed more than 80 lives of working class people in the Caribbean and Pacific. These attacks and the wider ongoing pattern of regional militarization and imperialist control fundamentally violate the principles of the zone of peace. I'm used to doing with AFRICOMs. As U.S. Southern Command, Southcom, has systematically transformed the Caribbean into a staging ground for its hegemonic projects. Puerto Rico, a colonial territory, is consistently used as a strategic site for the deployment and launch of military exercises, normalizing its status as a forward operating base, while nations like Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago are treated as subordinate puppet states that risk their own sovereignty to facilitate U.S. objectives. Simultaneously, Haiti has been cast as a laboratory for imperial policy, where an accelerated militarization and occupation over the last 4 years has provided a blueprint for intervention. The racist and cynical designation of Haiti paramilitary armed groups as terrorists to be eradicated by U.S.-led occupation has done nothing to relieve impoverished, marginalized Haitians from the violence of these gangs, because they are a direct consequence of imperialism. And yet the excuse and Department of War's and yet the excuse and label of terrorism now has been directly exported to the case of Venezuela. There, the U.S. Department of War cynically compares Caribbean people in fishing boats to Al-Qaeda, a transparent tactic to manufacture a pretext for full military invasion and attack. But the Black Alliance for Peace is clear. It is not just Trump or the Republican Party, but the U.S. settler colonial state that is the enemy of peace and true human rights. Its actions of war and economic destruction in our region are responsible for the massive forced coercive migration of the global South, the parasitic exploitation of U.S. capitalists of the peoples and nations of our region have created the conditions that have forced millions to desperately attempt to get to the north just to live. Historically, U.S. administrations have rejected the idea that the U.S. is equal to any other state. Make America great again, and the liberal claims of U.S. exceptionalism are simply two sides of the same white supremacist coin. That is why the doctrine of full spectrum dominance is proudly embraced by the duopoly and foreign policy community and reminds us of the guiding bipartisan strategic objective of U.S. foreign policies, no matter which party resides in the White House. To oppose this bipartisan militarization and violence and to expel the nefarious forces of imperialist colonial violence from our region, we must be steadfast in guaranteeing our Americas as a zone of peace. This guarantee can only be built from the bottom up, through the grassroots coordination and popular struggle that highlights anti-imperialist national sovereignty. This is why the Popular Steering Committee for the Zone of Peace in Our Americas Network, which BAP is a part, launched the U.S. NATO out of Our Americas Network earlier this year. The network is the mass organization structure of the Zone of Peace campaign designed to educate the public and strengthen America's wide consciousness among the peoples of the region. The Black Alliance for Peace has joined this National Day of Action against the war in Venezuela to defend Venezuela's sovereignty and connect our struggles. The gravity of the movement demands a coordinated and powerful response that moves from mobilization to sustained organization. Our movements must pull together our forces to expose the imperial lies that cynically label popular resistance as terrorism, broadening our analysis to expose the interlocked assaults on sovereignty across the region. And we must understand our collective consciousness beyond merely exposing these lies and calling for liberal reforms and towards challenging state violence and oppression through popular power. This event unfolds as we approach Human Rights Day on December 10th. The U.S. rhetoric of human rights is systemically betrayed by the enabling of atrocities in West Asia and the destabilization of sovereign states in Africa and Latin America, to the brutal policing, economic violence, and systematic racism evident within their own major cities and rural areas. The dichotomy reveals that human rights within the Western imperialist framework are not universal principles, but instruments, tools wielded to condemn adversaries while justifying intervention, economic warfare, and the maintenance of a global order of profound inequality. Against this fallacy, we champion a people-centered human rights framework. This is not an abstract idea, but a practice of collective struggle, from Venezuela to Guinea-Bissau to Washington, D.C. To advance these rights, the mobilizations today must fuel the concrete building of national coalitions against Southcom, must enhance local self-defense networks, and must learn from the powerful examples of Venezuela's communal militias and projects that embody popular democracy. The steadfastness of the Venezuelan people who have joined these militias by millions to defend their homeland is not just an act of national resistance, it is living proof that alternatives to imperial domination exist. The U.S. empire seeks to destroy the Bolivarian Revolution precisely because it shows we can fight for people-centered human rights and for true, just, militant peace. In unwavering solidarity with the Venezuelan people, we in the Black Alliance for Peace and the U.S. NATO out of our Americas Network are committed to continuing this fight and organizing in solidarity with their masses and popular movements across the Americas to defend sovereignty, dignity, and the right to forge a different future. Defend Venezuela's sovereignty. U.S. and NATO out of our Americas. Make our Americas a zone of peace and end neocolonialism and militarism in the Caribbean. Thank you.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
U.S. out of everywhere.
U.S. out of everywhere.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
U.S. out of everywhere.
U.S. out of everywhere.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
U.S. out of everywhere.
U.S. out of everywhere.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the
No
air.
boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
U.S. out of everywhere.
U.S. out of everywhere.
We want justice, you say how?
We want justice, you say how?
End the sanctions now.
And think the saints now.
We want justice, you say how?
We want justice, you say how?
End the sanctions now.
And the sanctions now.
We want justice, you say how?
We want justice, you say how?
End the war now.
End the war now.
We want justice, you say how?